This is the last bite of the cherry, Colin, in my opinion. This is the last bite of the cherry. If something doesn't happen now, and something doesn't happen on a political front, at least there's no 10 years to fix this. There's two Irelands. There's an Ireland full of people that haven't been affected yet by the madness that's been inflicted upon the people of Ireland by its government. And there's the people that have been affected by it.
My view really is, if you put your foot in the country and you haven't got a passport, that's it. You've started on the wrong foot because you broke the law. That's the way I look at that.
It's illegal. Try doing that. Try doing that anywhere else. Try getting yourself onto a plane somewhere. You can't get onto a plane, by the way, if you don't have documentation and you don't have a ticket. You can't just go to Dublin Airport and go to the Aer Lingus kiosk and say, look, there's €250 or €1,000. Get me to JFK in New York. It's not going to happen. You're not going to get on the plane in the first place. And if you do get off at the other side, even though you're an Irishman and you've got, no criminal convictions, you can't just waltz into New York and say, right, I'm here. I want a house. I want benefits. I want free medical care. I've got my kids with me here. I want them to go into school. That's insanity. But that's what's being accepted as the norm here now in Ireland. The madness has been going on for so long, and people have been so conditioned to accept it and demonized and othered by these multiple sources, from the mainstream media to their government to just about every political party, even to the new president, and from all these NGOs and their friends and neighbours, that if you speak out against this, they're afraid to put their head over the parapet because they don't want to take a shot. Being labelled far right, being labelled racist, being labelled a xenophobe, being labelled an extremist. No, it's called common sense. You don't let illegal people into your country, and you sure as hell don't let them remain there, and you don't prioritise them over your own people, at which at the minute, as I'm sure you know, the amount of homelessness is at a record-breaking high. It's growing by the month. There's about 16,000 people, not including sofa surfers, not including undeclared homeless, 5,000 kids in emergency accommodation. How the hell can you defend allowing more people to flood in whenever you've got 5,000 kids in emergency accommodation?
Absolutely.
What right-minded society could justify that? Sorry, I'm getting a bit worked up about this, by the way, but it just boils my piss,
Yeah, it does. It does me too. It really, really does. That this emergency accommodation, I've been in people's, they're shitholes. You're talking about like a couple and two kids, and they've just got a tiny room with two bunk beds. That's it. They spend the day out. They come back and crash in these bunk beds, and that's it. It's not a way to live. And yet you see other people that are picking up everything. Now, and to be clear, I moved to the UK in '86, and I suppose in certain terms I was an economic migrant. I suppose there's no other way to look at it. There was no money here. I needed money. I went to England. But I slept on an inch thick of foam for 2 months, ate beans and worked in shitty factory jobs. I struggled, and then it started to work out for me. I had some great times in England. But when things are being handed to people, it's kind of and I have to say about the Ukrainians getting more college education this year, I couldn't get my college paid for. So when you see that and 5.5 days in A&E. And all of these things that weren't there before all this came in, or not being able to get a GP. I've got about 6 medical things. They're all on the long finger. You don't know when you're going to get them. If you walk into an A&E in Tala, it's like you're in a different country. Not just security, everyone there is attending, and they're stressed. The staff are stressed out to the max because they haven't got the staff to look after them. The thing about the nurses is, talking to this nurse, she's doing a 14-hour day, 7 days a week. Then she gets her break off. And so she's talking about, that's me off to Australia. A load of them are. They just had enough of these brutal hours for shitty pay. And why would they stay? So slowly but surely, we're losing all the Irish nurses. And that's a bit of a shame as well. The health system is, I could talk about it for hours after spending over a month in it. It's just a shambles at the moment. India has better hospitals than Ireland at the moment.
Take that point that you've just made about the nurses, okay? So one of the things that Harris said yesterday when he was making a speech about there's too many people coming in Ireland, he of course had to caveat that with immigration is good. Without immigration, where would we be? The whole health service sector would collapse. Hospitality would collapse. This would collapse. That would collapse. The question is, but if we were able to retain our own doctors and nurses that have been born, reared here, educated here, and are here to pay their taxes and want to grow up here and raise a family here, rather than them having to look at Australia, for example, as not many people, it used to be an aspirational thing. Oh, I'm emigrating to Australia. Some people did that. They made a plan for it. They went and did it. There's a lot of people going to Australia or America or Canada these days now, professionals, not necessarily because they want to go there to build a future, because they feel they have to go there to build a future. They cannot afford to stay here. They cannot afford to live on the wages that they're being paid here. They cannot get a house here. They cannot raise a family or even think about raising. So they have to go to Australia. So you take that nurse out of the pool, you send her over to Melbourne, or you send her to Perth, or you send her to wherever she is in Australia. That leaves a vacancy in the Irish Health Service. Where are they going to fill it from? Oh, we need immigrants to come in. We need people to come in, because without them, then they're propping up the health service. So are they propping up the health service because the Irish nurses, doctors, professionals, whoever, have been so badly treated and paid and screwed over by the government that they have to leave, that it is a necessity? Or has it been engineered that way? That's again what I'm trying to say. This whole
Yeah,
business about your beliefs about Ireland at the minute, it's
yeah.
either been engineered this way, or it's gross incompetence, or it's both. But now the chickens are coming home to roost. And you talk about
And
health.
so are you thinking engineered?
Well, without a doubt. I
Okay,
mean, listen, you may not like Simon Harris. You may
I
not
don't.
like Mabel Martin. You may not like Callum McEntee. I detest them all, but they're not completely, they're not 50, 45, 50 IQ people who are, dribbling. They know what they're doing. How can you go home at night? How can you go home at night and look yourself in the mirror? And I believe, whatever conscience they would have had at some stage is now long, long gone. You
Mm.
went down the other day and spoke to here's another point. You went down and spoke to those four souls that are currently on hunger strike outside
Oh
the
yeah,
Dáil. They're
yeah.
institutional and reform school survivors. They only want two things. They want a full contributory pension, and they want an HAA medical card. They're not after hundreds of thousands of euros in claims. They're not after claims for severe mental, physical distress that they have suffered over the years. They just want the basics. And they told me, when I spoke to them briefly about a week or two ago, one of the ladies said to me, they said, we have had a meeting with Helen McEntee. And she said, and her words really hit me hard, and I felt this about that woman McEntee for a long time. One of those ladies said, in all the years I've spent in institutions, and with all the demons that I have had to deal with when I've been in there, in terms of the people that were running those institutions, the people that were abusing us, she said, I've never met anyone as cold and callous and unfeeling as Helen McEntee. That was her very
Really?
words to me. And I certainly wasn't going to argue with her against it. So she
Yeah.
may be cold, evil, unthinking, and self-serving, but she ain't totally stupid. She knows exactly what she's doing, Colin, in my opinion. How can you
I
not? How can you
I
not know
think
what
so.
you're
And
doing?
her family have connections to certain things that we haven't discussed, of course. I don't really have much time. I don't have much time for people who don't respond to gripped media and who walk off when they're mid question. I don't have
Yeah.
time for that. Mary Lou McDonald was a beaut for it. But I think the questions have to be asked, and the questions aren't being asked. And if they're being asked, they're not being answered. So what do you think with the new happenings that were just discussed around Harris and Mihal? What changes do you think? First of all, would the changes that they make just be a bit of keep us cozy, or is it because they're actually fearful at this stage and they say, right, this is going to cost us, the guard is going to cost more, etc., etc. What do you think's behind that, or what will they do?
Well, if they're going to do something, they've taken the first step. They've acknowledged, and again, that could just be lip service. We're going to find this out, Colin, in pretty short order. We're going to find out if they're being serious or not, because if they do back up what they've just said with actions, it's going to have to happen really, really quickly. It can't be faffed about. Like, look at the promises they made about housing. Look at the promises, the lies they made about housing last year coming up to the election. Oh, we're going to build 40,000 units this year. Towards the end of the year, it turns out what they built 30. They're way behind on targets. They've had independent auditors coming in to say not only are you never going to meet your housing targets, but you're not even good. They're falling further and further behind the longer this goes on for. There's only so far you can bluff people for, right? There's only so far you can spout crap for before people say enough is enough. And I think what's happening, or what you've seen happening with people taking to the streets, albeit in more diminished numbers now than it was at the start of the year, because I think people got sick of just walking up and down the street, listening to the same people, standing on the same platform, saying the same speeches. Again, there was nothing material ever materialized from those. There was a great opportunity to capture that energy and that groundswell of public opinion back in April, May, and June of this year. And it wasn't capitalized on. And I think people have become disillusioned as well with the nationalist movement that grew up, or was trying to grow up. There's good people in that movement. There's a lot of great people with great ideas, but there was never any unity. There was never any coming together. There was never any unified front to capitalize on the amount of people that were crying out for something to get behind. Okay. And the
You feel
government,
there is now?
well,
I mean,
what's happening is, well, what's happening is now is what I've seen, or from there is a vacuum. There's a huge vacuum there for something to be done on a political front. And even I think there's a Senator Keown, is it what's her name, Sharon Keown? She's came out this week, or and said that sign up on where there's other people are talking about new center right parties being made, but a lot of people as well. Who's in it for Ireland, or who's in it for the ego, or who's in it for the pay packet, right? Because
they're the questions you have to ask.
Right. And I think that becomes apparent pretty quickly. So there's this, if you go back to last week, this spoil your vote thing sent a massive message to the government. So effectively speaking, on a very high level with the numbers, only 1 in 4 people voted for Catherine Connolly, right? Only 1 in 4, because 55% of the electorate didn't turn up. 10% voted for, or 8% voted for Jim Gavin, who wasn't even on the ballot. 29% went to Humphreys, and 14% went to spoil the vote, which was a tenfold increase on the last presidential election. The previous one, I think, was 1.3, 1.5%. It jumped up to around about 13 to 15%. That's a tenfold increase. So there was about 215,000, let's call it 250,000 when you factor in Gavin's spoiled votes. There are people that were crying out for something to vote for when Maria Steen got nobbled in her presidential run. So there's obviously people eyeing this landscape up politically. Maybe people that have had a go at things politically in the past, it hasn't worked out for them. They may be thinking, now's my time. Let's carpe diem. Let's seize the day. But the problem is, possibly, you're going to have multiple groups of people that are all looking at this pot that's there for the taking, and it is there for the taking. But are you going to find then you're going to have a centre-right blob, like you had a grassroots nationalist blob 6 months ago, fighting amongst each other? Who should be the leader? Who should be the second in command? Should we all get together behind one party? Some people will be there because of a love for Ireland. Some people will be there because they like getting their face on social media. And some people will be there because they think that's my ticket to a long income and possibly a pension if we ever do make it to the Dáil. So this will all become apparent in time. But without a shadow of a doubt, this is the last bite of the cherry. Colin, in my opinion, this is the last bite of the cherry. If something doesn't happen now, and something doesn't happen on a political front, at least there's no 10 years to fix this. If something doesn't happen by the time of the next general election, and something's not put in place to stop this rat, I think it'll be too far gone. It's like, gangrene. Gangrene. If gangrene gets into your big toe, right, the toe needs to be removed. Because if it's not removed, it's going to spread to the rest of your foot. Then the foot needs to be removed. And if it's not removed off the foot, then, your leg's off at the knee. Okay. And if you don't cut that leg off at the knee, then it rots into your whole body and you're dead. If you don't stop the rot in time, once it sets into a degree, it's going to be nigh on impossible to reverse it. So that's why I'm thinking time is of the essence now. That's why I'm kind of, I see there are good people out there. There is a massive hunger and a thirst for something for people to get behind, but it has to be people with integrity doing it. It has to be people with a pure motive doing it, and it has to be done right. But I think if you can put all that together, there's a chance. You know what I mean? There's a chance, but it has to be done right.